Validation is a rather important topic in that it is the basis of much of what we do in terms of process control and HACCP programming. It is the burden of evidence necessary to prove that a process is safe for this product, and it is minimizing and mitigating any hazards that may be included in this food product. So the rules that I'm bringing up here have been defined by CFIA. However, it's one where they're keeping their cards close to their chest, at least right now, as they transfer into the Safe Food for Canadians Act. What I'm referencing is the Codex Alimentarius Commission document, the Guidelines for Validation of Food Safety Control Measures. Now, just some quick definitions. Food safety control systems are a combination of control measures when taken as a whole ensure food is safe. And a control measure is an action or activity that can be used to prevent or eliminate a food safety hazard and reduce it to an acceptable level. Monitoring, as you know, is conducting planned sequence of observations to control parameters, make sure control measures are under control. And validation, again, is obtaining evidence that your control measure or combination of control measures, when implemented properly, are going to control a hazard to a specific outcome. Verification is that aspect of applying methods, procedures, tests, and other evaluations on top of your monitoring to make sure your control is in place. So what's the principle behind it? Every company that's doing a HACCP program needs to make sure that everything's in control, and this is the burden of evidence. There is a systematic approach to evaluating the evidence that is there to make sure that it is going to be indeed sufficient. In many cases, you need to be doing some forward-thinking approaches with routine measurements, and in other cases, there are historical data or references that can be used to support your validation. So when do you need to do it? You need to do it anytime a new process control is being implemented, anytime a new product is being launched that is substantially different from other products. And in the case of GFSI programs, it needs to be reviewed on an annual basis to make sure that the science hasn't changed radically in terms of its interpretation. Validation typically is linked to critical control points or operational prerequisite controls. However, it is one where you do need to be aware that there may be additional opportunities for validation within your prerequisite program or GMP. So who does it? Well, under GFSI, under virtually every national food safety program, the industry and the establishment is responsible for ensuring that the process controls are validated. It is not up to the inspection agency within Canada or within any other country to be able to go out and say, yes, your system is validated. The evidence comes from the industry. It comes from the establishment. However, you may be interacting with government to make sure that your evidence is sufficient. So, it is one where many governments do provide those appropriate limits on your processing. In many cases, establishments go out to individuals like myself who are considered processing authorities, experts in the field who can provide the scientific evidence for validation and help certify processes to make sure that, indeed, a proper risk assessment has been done and a proper investigation to identify appropriate information to define the process control. So what do you need to gather? You do want to make sure that you have your HACCP hazard analysis and PRP allocation so that you can understand where are your key hazards within your processing operation. You do want to understand what real hazards are, and so you want to make sure that you're doing site-specific evaluation. You want to make sure that there's a prioritization. Anything that's a human health hazard and has a high probability of incident, or even a statistical probability of incident does need to show validation. Now, in many cases, you may have defined control mechanisms. The government may say, cook this product to an internal temperature of this, or you must show a log reduction of a set number of log for a certain organism. You may have defined control mechanisms. Our favorite one, canned goods, pH must be below 4.6 to control Clostridium botulinum. In many cases, these control mechanisms are almost like folklore in the food manufacturing industry. In many cases, there are targeted control strategies that we need to be focusing on in terms of managing hazards, such as cooking things out or using pH, whereas in other cases, you may be looking at diffuse strategies, such as managing your water quality, ensuring appropriate sanitation within your facilities, and so on. Be very deliberate, thinking about what is the hazard, where is it coming from, and what is my best means to be controlling it. So let's give some examples here. Actually, I may take a chance to start a new video so that we can make sure we have the time to discuss this properly. So watch for video number 2 on some case studies that relate to process validation. Take care. Have fun.